Hey, what's up, you guys? Caitlin here. I'm going to take you guys through a little bit of a hip mobility assessment today. A lot of runners, we hear how important, having good hip strength are, having good hip stability are, and I second both of those things. But today I want to zero in a little bit more on mobility because, we think of our hips as like, kind of the powerhouse that drives us forward in our running. They also kind of act as our steering wheel. And that's where that stability piece comes in is, how are we, driving ourselves, driving our car down the road. But if we've got a steering wheel that's kind of locked up, it's going to be really hard for us to, steer from our hip and drive in the direction that we want to. So I'm going to help you guys zero in a little bit on that hip mobility. Some signs that you might be having some issue with hip mobility would be, tension, pain, and, kind of in your hip areas and also in your low back. If we're not able to move freely through our hips, our low back is an area that likes to compensate and kind of make up for that for us. So if you're a runner who's been dealing with some stiffness, some tenderness, maybe even some tension while you're out on the run or afterwards in that low back area, this will be a good thing for you to sweep through and kind of check in on. So all you need for this is really just a piece of floor. We're going to start out by taking a look at how our hip flexors are moving, seeing if we can actually, access some of that hip extension, because if we can't get our leg behind us when we're running, we can't really access our glutes. We can't get into the extension, into the drive that we need to push ourselves forward. And that's where a lot of times you'll see like that low back compensating and wanting to extend instead, which can make it a little bit cranky. So you're going to take a half kneel position to look at that. So what we're looking at right now is we're looking at the leg that's down here on the ground. Okay, so all I'm going to do is kind of in that position, just kind of, again, we don't really want the movement to come from our low back. So what I like to do is just put my hands there on my pelvis to kind of give me that reminder to kind of keep my low back in a little bit more neutral, not trying to puff my belly button out, but trying to really make sure that my movement, my drive is coming from my hips. And I already feel tension, even when I just make sure that my spine's back in a little bit more neutral position with my pelvis. I can already feel a nice pull through the front of my hip. And for a lot of us, we spend a lot of time in the car, we spend a lot of time at a computer. This is an area that, it's in a shortened position for a lot of the time in our day. So it's an area a lot of us probably need to take a look at. The other thing you can do to kind of intensify that is just kind of squeezing those butt muscles, squeezing your glute. That's going to lock that pelvis in a little bit more and intensify that pull. So if you feel a pull here, that's a pretty good indicator that, hey, maybe I do need to work on that hip extension a little bit, work on that mobility in my hip flexors. There's definitely some things you can do that are more active before the run to work on that. Today I'm going to focus more on like the mobility aspect and, kind of treating that piece of it. So one thing that if you're feeling tension here, I would encourage you just spend some time there, kind of work on that mobility, even spending, 3 or 4 minutes per leg, just working through some of this is going to help alleviate some of that tension in your low back and the front of your hips. But just spending some time here. And of course you want to do this on both legs. The other piece you can get into here is from this position. This is going to intensify things, so be warned. Is kind of getting you up into like a couch stretch or modified couch stretch. So you've maybe seen some people where you'll do this like in front of the couch or in front of the chair where your foot's actually up on that. But I don't know if you can see that, where that automatically wants to pull me into a little bit more of that back extension. But that's a good mix up on it. The other good variety here is just kind of reaching an arm up into the air. You're gonna go get into that psoas area a little bit more. But just spending some time there, again, 3 or 4 minutes on each leg. If you're able to do that pretty consistently, and these are easy enough to do while the kids are watching TV or, are entertained with something on the couch, jump in there and do a few of those. So that's looking at that extension, that flexion piece. The other piece that we need to look at with our hips is the rotation, right? Because yes, we're running in a straight line, but as we move from foot to foot, our body's got to be able to control the rotation that's happening. If we can't do that, again, we start to see some compensations, whether it's, you've got a knee that's diving in or diving out, or, maybe your low back starts doing kind of some funky, side to side things to kind of make up for that. So again, Hip stability, hip strength, very important things I want to talk with you guys about in a video down the road. But today I really want to focus on that mobility piece because again, if our steering wheel is locked up, even if we've got good strength, we're not going to be able to use that mobility, use that strength if we don't move well. And hips are a commonly kind of tight, cranky area. So one way that I like to look at rotation and just kind of assess it, and it's an easy one you can do on your own, is kind of what I call 90-90 rotation, or what's called 90-90 rotation. So you're sitting here, your knees are bent at about 90 degrees. They're out in front of your body, so you don't need to be leaning way forward. It's going to make it hard for you to move. Just kind of want to stay in a little bit of a relaxed position. If you need to kick back just a little bit, you sure can. Again, I already feel some of this. I know I'm someone where my hip mobility is a little bit more challenged. So again, these are things I probably need to spend a little bit more time doing, and I want to share them with you guys today. So you're going to start out to this side. So in this position, this leg of mine is an internal rotation. This leg's an external rotation. And for me, I can tell already the leg for me that's an internal rotation, it feels a lot tighter than the leg that's sitting here out in external rotation. And so we're going to kind of hang here, 5-10 seconds. And what you're going to do is kind of a little hip shift and a switch. So now I'm the exact opposite. Now this leg's an external rotation, this leg's an internal rotation. And what I would encourage you to do is you kind of switch from side to side, is kind of feel the difference. From side to side, from movement to movement. Kind of get a feel for your own body and what you feel tight in. Again, if you're having pain and you really feel like you're moving really well in all these positions, probably an indicator that, hey, we need to look at, stability or strength, because maybe I'm someone, if you're able to move really well and you're having pain, you might be someone that, mobility comes really easy for you and you're actually really, really flexible. So in that case, sitting here and doing mobility, doing a lot of extra stretching and things like that isn't going to do much for you because you're already, way on that end of the spectrum in those areas. And what you need is more of that strength and stability. Some people are on the flip side of that where, maybe they've done a lot of weightlifting throughout, sports growing up and they've always been really strong, but the mobility is something they need to work a little bit more on. Hey, Frank, come on out of here. Sorry, I've got my assistant. So those are a couple things you can do to look at your hip mobility. Another one that I like to key in on, there you go, baby, is if you just get in a simple quadruped position here, kind of on all hands and knees. You're going to drive that hip up, so kind of that donkey kick position. Then you're just going to tilt your foot from side to side, almost like you're drawing a rainbow with your foot that's up. And again, you're kind of looking here, so as your foot drops over to this way, you're in some external rotation. As you bring it back towards the floor this way, you're going to do a little bit of that internal rotation. Key with this is trying to stay nice and stable so that movement's not coming from your lower back. And again, important to do those on both sides. Hope you guys found these helpful. Again, if you're going through this stuff and you're finding some key areas to work on, go address them. The mobility piece, I really think, makes a nice movement snack at the end of your day. So if you've got kids settled in, or even if they get into one episode of Bluey, you've got plenty of time to run through these and get them done. If you're going through these and they feel pretty easy for you, but you're still having some, issues in that area, probably a sign to dive deeper into, what do I need to do from a stability standpoint or maybe a strength standpoint. Again, those are things I hope to address here down the road. Also things, if you guys have questions on, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Keep getting out there and running yourself resilient.